Oh, good morning, everyone. Damien, I love your icon there of a seal.
Thank you.
Oh, it's even cuter when I see it up close. That's fantastic. Okay, I am going to share my screen, including the picture of, well, maybe not Damien's seal. Huh. Actually, can people see my screen or not? Because I'm seeing you are unable to connect to Zoom.
I can see it.
Okay, good. So people can see the screen? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see it, yeah.
Okay. So we kind of have a, pardon? Okay, we got a somewhat busy day today. So things that I want us to do is talk about the midterm next Thursday, and we have a practice respondus browser quiz that we're going to do. Second thing is we need to finish up general NoSQL discussion. And we need to then move on into MongoDB. So just quickly with the midterm, you can find details about it. Just a moment. By going to the exams link on my main 465 webpage, there is a midterm review guide. So take a look at that. We're covering all the material up through today with MongoDB. And then there's a sample midterm with example questions. And as I said last time, I'm going to be a little lighter on the multiple choice, multiple answers because the way Canvas grades, and a little bit heavier on making you do some of your own stuff. One of the, I think actually the only major differences between the exam you see here, the exam you'll take on Thursday, is there's a MongoDB question that asks you about, it gives you some tuples, and then it gives you several queries and asks you what tuples they return. And there might be some questions over general NoSQL things like the pack theorems and cap theorems we're going over today. And then the second thing where this sample exam will differ from the exam on Thursday is that you will be asked to derive some functional dependencies on Thursday, whereas here you're given functional dependencies and asked to do a decomposition, which is something you will also be asked to do on Thursday. But in addition, on Thursday, you'll be given a separate problem where you derive functional dependencies. And that replaces a bunch of the multiple choice questions from the past. Okay. On Thursday, there are 3 separate questions where you may wish to draw a picture. One is for an ER diagram, one is for a B+ tree, and one is for the relational algebra and relational calculus queries. So it'll be okay to draw on a piece of paper. What you'll need to do once the exam ends is take pictures of those diagrams with a tablet or a phone and then upload them to Canvas. And again, we will practice that today. So any question, and the midterm is open note, open book. There's links in the exam to the ebook and my lecture notes. Now, I can't emphasize this enough, but it never seems to get through, which is it behooves you to memorize material for the exam. Having it instantly available is much faster than trying to click through, especially with the Respondus Lockdown browser. I was playing with it last night and my PDFs don't come up very fast in it. So if you're constantly clicking, looking for information, you're just not going to finish the exam. You really, as I say, the best thing you can do for an exam is memorize material, because then it's right there immediately at your fingertips and you're not leafing through your notes trying to find it. The second best thing is to have some, maybe 1 or 2 pages of a crib sheet where you've kind of got a condensed bit of information that's quick reference. The worst thing you can do is really be clicking through, because it's going to slow you down tremendously. So with that, so then what I plan to do and what I'm going to test today is running the exam using the Respondus Lockdown browser and a monitor. If you don't have the monitor ability to use the monitor, let me know, because the second thing I plan to do is have you try to join the Zoom session via your phone. And don't worry if you don't have the phone today, but on Thursday, what I'm hoping to do is have you access the Zoom session via your phone, so you can enter questions via chat if you want, and still be working with the computer. But what I want to see today is how much it complains when you start writing things down and looking down. If it's like really annoying and beeping at you, we're going to have to rethink the whole thing. So, questions.
This is one thing. Actually, I was going to bring this up just now. It just occurred to me. The fact that it looks like Respondus wants everything closed down, and we'll have to do Zoom over the phone.
Yes.
If we have questions for you, is that I'm not sure how the whole voice thing will work. Like if we have a question about the exam.
So you should be able to, you can either speak up and talk, or you can use the chat feature through the phone. So
Okay.
what happened I gave a 365 exam Tuesday, and I did something different there. I was able to use Zoom in the background with Respondus. It has a beta feature, but no one was asking questions. And I'm not sure if that's because I don't believe that my exam was so clear that no one could ask a question. I think people were afraid to speak up. So I was.
Once you're in Zoom, or once you're in Respondus, you can't unmute yourself in Zoom. So if you want to speak up or even access chat, it has to be on your phone.
Okay, so very good. So that's why I think last spring I did it this way, where I used the Lockdown browser and a phone, and it worked well. People were giving me chat questions and speaking up. So that's why on Thursday, I'm going to ask you to log into Zoom via your phone and then use Respondus locking down your computer. Again, I know I didn't ask you to download Zoom onto your phones today or your tablets. So today, I'm going to be experimenting to see how the Respondus monitor works. Okay. So that's the whole reason for using this phone. Is the person who asked is absolutely right. Respondus locks everything down, but by allowing you to access the Zoom session via the phone, you can still ask questions. Other questions?
I'm just curious, will Respondus flag us for cheating if we're looking at a phone during the exam?
Yep, it will. That's why I want to, but just it will actually, it doesn't. What it does is it gives me a report at the end, and it indicates where it thinks in the session, like at minute 5.05, minute 8.05, where it thinks there might be an issue. And then I can go back and look at the video log. So it doesn't say you're cheating. What it says is at this point, the person like left the room or something happened for an extended period of time, and you may want to look at the video. Okay, so it does not claim that you're cheating. It just, what it does is it gives me a report for each person in a video file, and it says, these are the places in the exam where you may want to check the video because something happened and respondents couldn't figure out what happened at that point, but a human can. Okay,
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
you're welcome.
I don't know if it's a little late for it, probably is, but Canvas has a don't click off my, or a warning, don't click off my page thing that doesn't lock anything down. You just take the exam through Canvas. Have you looked at that? Jance did it last semester.
No, send me email, okay? I like that. Send me some email.
Okay, yeah,
I
there's
can't
something on.
deal with it right now, but if you send me
Sure.
email, I'll take a look at it after class, okay?
Okay, I will.
It's not too late. That's why we're doing this a week in advance.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
So it's to try things out and shake out the kinks. Okay, other questions? Okay, in that case, just watch me for a moment. Don't start the quiz yet. So the only way I can find this practice quiz is to go to quizzes. I had it under midterm, but apparently because it's a practice quiz, it won't show up. So I went to quizzes, or go to quizzes, and you should be able to find a practice quiz, practice respondus quiz. Okay, and it is meant to walk you through a couple of things that you'll have to do in the exam. So first of all, I'm going to ask you to click through on the two links to make sure, and click around to make sure that you can actually get to the Zybook, get to my lecture notes. Then, and I know that a couple of my lecture note links seem to block. They're ones you don't seem to need, like a click through on how to use SQL, but it always seems to work when you can click on my slides and for most of my HTML notes. Then what I want you to do is during the exam, draw a quick picture. You can just doodle something on a piece of paper for about 20 seconds, then take a picture of it. And when you're done with the exam, you're going to upload it. I'm going to show you the link that you're going to use for uploading. Then I want you to get used to using the keyboard for doing relational calculus and relational algebra expressions. And this is where you're free to use either the keyboard or you can use a picture, one or the other. I think many of you will choose to use a picture, but you can use the equation editor. If you read the instructions, it says in the insert menu, you'll see an option for equation, and it allows you to use LaTeX in that equation editor. So some of you who are LaTeX gurus might prefer using the equation editor. So I'll give you your choice of which you want to do. And then the second one, same thing. I'm asking you, it actually also gives you a little practice with doing relations or deriving relationships and drawing them using ASCII art. And again, you can choose to do either ASCII art or you can choose to draw a diagram, whichever you find to be more convenient. So what I want you to do is, and then the final thing is once you're done taking the exam, then you should go to assignments. And the easiest thing to do is probably search for upload. and you'll see the practice quiz upload. So then go to practice quiz upload and make sure that you can upload the file to Canvas. Okay, so that's the final thing that you need to do. So what I'm going to do is take about 15, probably about 15 minutes for this whole thing, because it's going to walk you through some start stuff as well. So at this point, you're probably going to have to get out of the Zoom session for about 15 minutes. So what I'm going to say is let's reconvene at roughly noon, and we will discuss any problems you had with the quiz, and then we'll get on with the main lecture for today, okay? So feel free to get started. As I said, I think you're...
to get in.
Pardon? Oh, thank you. Yes, you need a password to get in. It's CS, capital letters, 465 is the access code. For both, you'll be prompted twice for it. Okay, so you all should start doing it, which will probably force you out of this Zoom session temporarily.
What time did you say to reconvene?
About 12 o'clock or so. I'll probably start up about 12:02.
Okay.
So start up responders and just go through the practice quiz stuff.
Yes, and then do the upload. Take a picture of a piece of paper and try to upload it to Canvas.
Do you mean upload to Canvas while we're still in the lockdown browser?
You won't
or
be
can we
able to,
exit?
no. You need
Okay,
to do
good.
the upload immediately afterwards. So the link will still be open,
Okay.
I think, for about 10 to 15 minutes after the exam. I'm also, if you have your phone, I'm going to be here the whole time. I'm not logging out, so you can always get back to me through another. You can do this on a different device if you want, and still I'll be here.
I installed Respondus on a computer without a webcam. So am I not going to be able to get the practice quiz done? Is it going to let me in without a webcam?
Let's see. Let me fix, yes, if I do something, okay? Let me quickly, I believe the answer is yes, but I'm going to have to give you an access code, and I think I have to, hold on for 1 second, okay? The person who asked, can you do it? Yes, just you should be prompted for an access code, and you can just also enter cs465, I believe.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is under assignments, right? I'm not seeing it.
Pardon?
This
This
is under
practice
assignments,
quiz?
right?
You're looking for the
I'm
practice
not
quiz?
seeing it.
It won't be under assignments. That's what I was saying. You have to look under quizzes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed that.
For
Okay.
some reason, Canvas won't show a practice quiz that's ungraded in assignments.
By the way, I just wanted to let you know that I was playing with some of the PDFs and they're actually loading about instantly for me. So that's no problem.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for letting me know. They were
Absolutely.
taking 5 to 10 seconds to load for me, so that's great. Thank you for letting me know.
I may be in an advantage just because I do tend to have good internet, but at least we know it's not the lockdown holdup. So,
Right. Okay,
yeah.
that's good. Yeah, I hate to say it, but we're a bit cheap on our internet, so we're not sitting on the fastest download speeds in the county.
Right. Whatever works though.
Mhm. Okay, just as I'm getting people coming back in, if I just kind of interested in what your experiences were. Is anyone finished the quiz yet?
Yeah, it went pretty smooth.
How did it go?
I guess it went as expected. I don't know. Like there's no problems.
Okay, and you didn't have an issue with uploading a file to the practice link?
I didn't have an issue because my computer, like I've cloud-based storage for photos that gets synced between my phone and my computer, so it was real easy. But if someone didn't have that, it might be kind of hard.
Okay, that's yep, I think. There's a couple I know. I know, for example, there's a Canvas app that you can put on your phone or tablet. Well, we can talk about that. You can upload, and then there's also oftentimes you can, like on my iPhone, I can airdrop something, a photo, quickly to my computer and then upload.
My experience with the app for Canvas submissions has been terrible, really. Would you consider email submissions from the phone? Because I know that's easy for a lot of people.
Huh.
Just emailing a picture?
Yeah, that would actually work. Okay. Not as easy for me to deal with, but is still dealable.
Well,
I remember in Dr. Jant's class, I just emailed the pictures to myself, and then once I was done with the exam, I
That would be the
uploaded it.
same thing. Good point. You email it to yourself and then you do an upload out of your email, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Good point.
I guess you could always do the submission out of Respondus, like after you finish, right?
Right. So you're going to get out of Respondus. You'll have about 10 minutes. I will admit, it's like the exam is effectively 10 minutes longer because you'll have a 10-minute window where you can take that picture and upload it. So you'll have to get out of the Respondus first. It won't allow an upload in the browser.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went in and I entered the access code, it didn't turn on my camera or anything, or try to use the Respondus.
So it didn't.
Is that normal?
Wait, it probably used the lockdown browser. What it didn't do is use the camera.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So should I just take it without the camera, or can I close out of this and try it again? Or
my guess is
I think I could have entered it without the code and it would have turned on Respondus.
so. I think the issue is you entered a code.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think the idea is that actually you should, if you don't enter the code, then it won't turn on. Don't enter the code and see if it lets you in. Don't worry about taking it again right now because it'll take too long. But
okay.
The other option I always give is letting if you're running a smartphone, I'm also happy to let the smartphone take for you to run a video through your camera. Meaning I can also, if you run video during the Zoom session, I can see it through the camera of your iPhone, and that's okay too.
So you're saying I could use Respondus on my computer without a webcam and then use my phone for Zoom with my camera on?
Yes.
And would that be acceptable for the midterm?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I'll codify that one in an email to make it clear, but yes.
Dr. Veazey, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Zoom always picks the wrong microphone. I noticed, is it okay if I just do most of my work on paper instead of doing ASCII art and trying to use the equation editor and stuff like that? I said some of this stuff in my responses in the quiz, but I find the equation editor and ASCII art, it just takes too much time for a test.
Absolutely. That's why I said it's your choice. The whole point
okay.
to give you to let you try it to see which you preferred. So
okay.
For the B+ tree, for the ER diagram, and for the relational calculus / relational algebra, I'll let you for those 3 questions, I'll let you use write it on paper, take a photo, and upload it.
In that case, would we just leave that text box blank, or do you want us to
What
put?
I want you to do in that case is just put a note that says C upload, so that I know.
Okay.
Just type C upload. That's all you need to do in that case. And that way, Canvas also won't complain to you. If you leave it blank and you try to end the exam, Canvas will say you didn't do the problem. So just typing something in there will shut it up.
But I mean, actually, I haven't looked at the sample exam yet. So this could be a really this could be pointless to mention. But I mean, is there anything else? I'm just thinking if there's something else besides like something you didn't anticipate other than relational algebra, ER, whatever that I'd want to draw out. I mean, we can just write up what we want to and just submit it if we thought it was better to write on paper, or is it like kind of strict where you only want ER, relational algebra, and that kind of stuff questions?
So
Well, that makes sense.
It makes sense. On the other ones, I really would like to see text, like there's some SQL queries. And honestly, if you can't type them out, the problem with handwriting, especially on those SQL queries, I always run into several examples where they're just not readable. And I just don't think it's hard to type out an SQL query.
Okay, yeah, that's no problem. I mean,
and then same thing with the functional. The other one where I can imagine you running into some issues is with a functional dependency, but all you have to do is type, and the arrow is just a dash and a greater than sign. Again, that's not, I just don't think that's a big burden.
That's fine. I'm just trying to avoid, like, you know,
right.
one line has only like one little like character on it. Then you go down the ASCII art, basically.
Reviewing the questions, the only three that I can see causing problems are the ER diagram, the B+ tree, and the relational calculus / relational algebra. Everything else, I think you should have no trouble typing in the answer.
Okay. That makes sense. And I guess that we can always check with you if for some reason we see something.
Too. I mean, during the exam, you're free to ask.
Okay.
So when I put in that practice password, the cs465, it disabled my camera. Is that going to be a problem?
It disabled the camera?
Yeah.
It looks like what is happening is that I shouldn't have you enter the access code. It looks like the camera turns on if you don't do the access code. So what happened was I enabled what is called alternative. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
So you'll see that I have this advanced setting. It says allow this exam to additionally be delivered in a proctored lab, and I checked it. And I was doing that in case someone couldn't activate their webcam. But I think what happens when you do that is anyone who enters the access code for the exam ends up disabling the camera.
Okay, so we just don't enter the access code then if we have a webcam?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing is I am okay with you activating the camera on your phone or tablet. So entering the Zoom session through your phone or tablet and enabling that camera.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to be the camera on your laptop taking the exam. I just need to be able to view you. So I can do that just as easily through Zoom if you're streaming video through Zoom.
In that case, you wouldn't have responders flagging us though, right?
That is correct. But honestly, I'm pretty good also at doing what Respondus is doing and looking.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Video.
Probably better since it's the one giving you the video in the first place.
Yes.
Okay, so if I did that, because I didn't notice that Respondus asked me for anything camera-wise, because I read it would like, you know, you got to look at the camera and get this face view and all this other stuff, and I entered in that code and nothing happened.
Yeah, for you it was working in that case. The camera was almost certainly on in your case.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, nothing. It didn't ask me for anything, so now I'm not even sure if it was doing it. Okay.
Not done. Okay, looks like most of y'all are back. And any other comments or questions about what just happened? I imagine it seems like everyone was able to click through on the links.
I was, but I had issues accessing my Zaya books. I forgot what my password was since I used the browser password manager usually.
Okay. make sure that for the exam you have that password. And if you don't, email me, because I can get the ZyBook rep to reset your password, I think.
Sounds good. And it also took me like a minute or so to type in to get through the login to get to Canvas, since I had to do the push notification and stuff.
Okay.
From that.
So you're going to be given extra time on the exam. I know that that's an issue. So I'm going to try to make the exam probably a 90-minute exam rather than an 75-minute exam.
What's the reason for using, I guess, Respondus over like just having our webcams on in Zoom? An open note and an open book exam.
The issue is that at least the lockdown browser makes it more difficult for you to get to other websites. That's the main reason, is that even with video of you, if I don't use the lockdown browser, you can get to any website that you want. And I understand that you can try to look down and get to another website, but it's generally, you'd be surprised when I'm looking at things, it starts to look suspicious if you're doing that. But if you're directly looking at the camera while being at another website, I can't tell. So the only way I can stop you from going to another website is with Respondus. That's the big reason.
I'll email you, but I think you'll like the no click off Canvas, because it doesn't require so much closing down of stuff on my computer, and it's just a one-shot thing.
Okay, thanks.
I'll let you know. Jance will be able to help you with that. I'm not sure the details.
I know that, right. I was thinking that I could just email Jance and he could let me know that too.
I have a question. So I have a second monitor that I was going to use in order to have like the notes and stuff up on. Is it going to flag me if I look over to the side and look at those notes?
It's going to flag you, but I can then look at the logs to see what's going on.
Okay. I also had, I decided to type in the equation just to test it out rather than use notebook paper. And the formatting on the first equation, once I got so far into it, it got really weird and wonky, and I was not able to delete one of the pipe characters at the very end, and I had not even typed in a pipe character at the end.
Yeah, it auto-fills a pipe block, like on both sides of what you're typing. That was weird.
You have to use the equation.
I agree. It got wonky on me too. I was able to use it despite that, but I know what you're talking about. So that's what I was basically having you do. I have no problem with your writing the answer to that on a piece of paper.
The brackets also got really weird too. They started like looking all
big, like an inch long, right?
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Yep. So it comes out okay when you come out of the editor, but in the editor, it looks like it's totally messed up. So like I said, this was just to get you to see if you wanted to use the equation editor during the exam or not. My guess is most of you won't want to use it, but for those of you who do, it's there.
Is it okay if we got the answers wrong?
Yeah, it's not a graded quiz.
Okay.
It's not a graded quiz. It was, that's why it was hard to find, in fact, is because Canvas does something funky with ungraded quizzes. Okay, I do need to do a bit of lecturing today, so let me get started on that. If you have questions or the like, you can always email me. So there were just a couple of things quickly that I wanted to show you. One had to do actually with the homework solutions, and it was for this is homework 4 when you were doing normalization. And it was the problem with the dentist and the patient appointment data. And the functional dependencies that I derived were these. So a dentist, an appointment date and time determined the patient. A dentist also determined the dentist's name. The patient number determined the patient name and the clinic to which they were assigned. The dentist and the appointment date determined the clinic they worked at that day. And then the patient, the appointment date and time determined the dentist they had. So the issue that could come up was if you chose the primary key to be the, let's see, you could choose the primary key to be the patient number, the appointment date, and the appointment time. And if you did that, you had an interesting dilemma. So clearly the patient number right here, FD3, was clearly a partial dependency. But there was an odd one, which is that you had staff number and appointment date determining the clinic. And what's odd about it is one of the two left-hand side attributes is part of the primary key, the appointment. So if you choose this as the primary key, then this is part of the primary key, and it looks like maybe it's a partial dependency. The problem is this attribute is not a subset of the primary key. In fact, it is a right-hand side attribute, and so it might look like FD4 is a transitive dependency. So I really don't care which way you handle it, but you had to take this dependency into account. So in my solution, I treated it as a partial dependency. I said, okay, since the left-hand side involved at least a subset of the primary key, I'm going to treat FD4 as a partial dependency. Again, I didn't care whether you treated it as a partial dependency or as a transitive dependency, because I kind of see it as a hybrid, and I won't have that kind of confusion on the exam. But you had to account for that dependency either when you went from first normal form to second normal form, or from second normal form to third normal form. So I realized when I looked at the solution that that dependency did not fit neatly into either the partial dependency definition I gave in class or the transitive dependency definition, but you did have to deal with that dependency in one of the two phases of decomposition. Okay.
Dr. VZ, yes, actually I do have one. I did not separate out date and time. I assumed it was just one thing. So I just put appointment. That's fine, right?
You might get some points taken off. Shoot me an email if that happens, okay?
I did the same thing too, actually, just because they were one column in the book.
Yeah.
Shoot
I did
me
as
an
well.
email in that case if you get points taken off.
Okay, thank you.
I can see it really is a composite attribute consisting of two sub-attributes. So it would normally be a timestamp kind
Well, I
of.
think SQL allows you to have a date and time together as one item.
That's what I said, a
Right.
timestamp. They would call it a timestamp in that case. If you combine the date and the time, they would call it a timestamp.
And that is valid here, right? Because that's the exact same representation.
Actually, it's kind of yes and no. The issue is you don't need the times. In FD4, you don't need the time to determine the clinic at which the staff person was assigned. So it's a little iffy.
But that can easily.
But I understand.
But they have built-in features to parse
them. Combine the two, then, and you don't separate them. It's an argument for. I guess what I'm saying is there's a good argument to be made for why the two should be separated. But if you combine them, yes, that you have no choice but to basically say the staff. But then I think you don't run into an issue. You'd still run into an issue. So yeah.
What if the staff has?
But the TA may take off some points, and then send me an email, okay?
Okay.
That
Thank
the
you.
The staff could have 2 different surgery numbers on the same day?
No. So the book, one of the assumptions, either the book or my assumption, said that a dentist on any given day, a dentist was assigned to exactly 1 surgery number, which is a clinic. So you cannot.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking of patient number. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So yeah.
That's why you have time up there with patient number.
So I think I made in the assignment, I think I said that you should assume that the patient determines the surgery number too. Okay. I'm going
to. I don't think I'm going to have 1 and 4 because I combined them. But yeah, anyway, or 4.
And then just let me know. Take a look after it's graded, okay? Just after it's graded, shoot me an email.
Will do.
Okay. So let me finish up with NoSQL. There was a couple things, whoops, that I did not get to on Tuesday. And then I'm going to say a few words about MongoDB. And then you don't have a after class activity for today, but what I'm going to have you do is my MongoDB notes. So I'm going to show you my MongoDB notes. Not those, not those. So you'll see that too far. I have 311 MongoDB and I have my MongoDB notes. And it has a quick overview, which is what I will go over today. And then it has starting with Mongo. And actually what I'm going to have you do is walk through this document on your own. I set it up so that it was like an interactive tutorial. And so what I want you to do is, if I finish early, I won't probably really finish early today, is go through this document, and instead of there being an after class activity, I'd like you to go through this document and just experiment with the queries. So I've shown you a variety of ways that you can create documents and do queries. And what I want you to try to do is work through those examples with this interactive editor that you can experiment with and see for yourself how the queries work. It's much better if you do it yourself than if I just drone on and say, this is how you do this query, this is how you do that query. If you actually copy and paste and see the results, you kind of have a better idea of what's going on. So there's no after class activity or quiz for today, but I do want you to go through it on your own and just read through it and copy and paste queries into the into this little command editor that you have. Okay, so there were a couple things that the we talked about eventual consistency and how NoSQL databases use eventual consistency to make things faster. The other thing that is often cited as making things faster is something called horizontal sharding. And it's a technique where you put different, where you partition a DB by row and put different partitions on different servers. So for example, if you have a staff relation, a very simple example is you divide it in two. You put the upper half on server 1, and you put the second half on server 2. So that'd be an example of horizontal sharding. And a lot is made of the fact that horizontal sharding makes NoSQL databases faster. And that was true, but the folks who implemented relational databases quickly figured out they could use horizontal sharding as well. So it turns out that, for example, many implementations of MySQL use horizontal sharding because that doesn't create a locking problem. If there's no race condition, if there's a race, possibly a race, if transaction A is dealing with this part at the upper half, and transaction B, transaction A is dealing up here, and transaction B is dealing down there, there is no conflict between the two, and therefore you don't have to have a locking issue. So there's not an issue. Now, if B also needs to do some things up here on server 1, there could be an issue. But if A and B are operating on different partitions, there are no locking issues. And so the usual issues that relational databases encounter with not being able to lock when they don't have shared memory is not an issue here. So while in fact horizontal sharding is a technique that was pioneered by NoSQL databases, it actually isn't exclusive to NoSQL databases. And so actually relational databases have adopted this technique. And so NoSQL databases definitely have an advantage as far as, I would say there's two big advantages with NoSQL databases. Okay, so for NoSQL databases have two big advantages. And that is they're good with semi-structured data. Okay, I'll list a second. They can eliminate joins, and I'll show you how they do that with MongoDB. And the third big thing is that they can be distributed. With multiple copies. Okay, when I was talking about horizontal sharding, that's not multiple copies. That was a database being partitioned into multiple parts and one copy being placed on one and the other part being placed on another, but there was not multiple copies. So with NoSQL, you can have multiple copies and have it distributed, and that does lead to faster execution. Okay, so as against that, you do have a bunch of advantages for relational DBs. Okay, so first of all, the query languages are much richer. So as we'll see for MongoDB, the query language is much lower level and is much more procedural and generally requires a programmer's expertise in order to query the database. It's a lot harder for non-programmers to query a NoSQL database because the query languages, so NoSQL query languages are more procedural. And as we'll see, the results tend to be coarser grained, meaning you're going to get back more data than you actually want. And you're going to have to eliminate it using procedural filters, which non-programmers won't be able to do. Okay, the second thing is eventual consistency. Okay, doesn't work. So eventual consistency is often unacceptable. Okay, so I guess another way to say it is relational DBs enforce the ACID principle of atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. So you can be sure that your transactions, that they're not going to conflict with each other, and that when they commit, they'll be durable, that they can't be rolled back. But in particular, you can be sure that your transactions aren't going to conflict. Okay. Third is if you have the money, and of course that is, you don't always have it, but if you have the money, okay, more expensive what are called storage area networks allow relational database management systems to scale up. Okay, so these storage area networks are like big, huge shared memory file systems. And relational databases are fine with locking with shared memory. It's only when it's non-shared memory that relational databases run into issues with locking. So if you have the money and can afford to buy these expensive storage area networks, then actually relational database management systems do tend to scale up pretty well for big data. The fourth thing is that relational databases are more mature and stable. And have stable APIs. So they have standards essentially. Whereas NoSQL databases are constantly evolving and they keep changing. So your software can easily break with new releases or if you go to a different type of database. Whereas because things are so standardized in the relational database world, you could probably go from an Oracle database to a MySQL database or a Microsoft database and not have to do a lot of adjustment because they're so similar to one another, at least through the standards. Okay, and then it turns out that unless the data is really sparse, okay, semi-structured data can be easily factored into multiple tables often. Now that may affect performance, but in terms of modeling, it's really not that hard in a relational database system to factor sparse data into separate relations, okay? And we've shown you how to do that with normalization. Also, in a NoSQL database, you always have to store the name of the column. It's called a key, but what it really is the name of the column. So when you hear key value pairs with NoSQL, what people are really talking about is it's a column name / value pair. Okay, so when people are talking about key value pairs, what they're really talking about is column name value pairs. So in relational databases, you don't store the column name, you only store the value. But in NoSQL databases, you're always storing the column name and the value, so that quickly can double or more than double the size of the data. For example, if you have an integer that's 4 bytes, but a column name like salary is 6 bytes. So you might the column name may actually take more storage than the value. So there are, in fact, a lot of disadvantages associated with NoSQL databases. You have to be careful when using them. Okay, so now something that actually I don't think I'm going to have time to go over it. So while it would be helpful, I will tell you that we're going to skip the CAP and the PAC ELC theorems. So you won't be responsible for them. I can already tell you they weren't on the exam. So we're going to skip these theorems. They basically, I'll just give you a quick thing. They're saying that there's no free lunch and that there's essentially a trade-off between availability and consistency. I'm sorry, between latency and consistency. So you can either have really fast reads, in which case you have to replicate or have copies of data so that you can get faster access, or you can have consistency, which means you get that writes don't conflict. So there's a trade-off, writes don't conflict. So if you're going to enforce the fact that writes aren't going to conflict with each other and that every write will be accurately reflected in the database, it's going to slow it down. So you get a choice. You can either ensure that all writes execute and are committed to the database, in which case it will be slower, or you can go for really fast reads and eventual consistency, meaning that some writes will be lost. And you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can have one or you can have the other, but you can't have both. You can have low latency, in which case consistency has to be traded off, or you can have consistency, but then your latency will go up. So that's the essence of them, but we will not talk about them because I want to get to MongoDB. Okay. So MongoDB is probably the most commonly used NoSQL database, and it's what's called a document database. So in MongoDB, you have what are called collections of documents. And roughly speaking, a collection is a relation in relational databases, and a document is a record or tuple in the relational model. And MongoDB uses JSON to represent its data. And if you looked at JSON, essentially you see that JSON has 6 types. You can have a string. You're allowed to have a number. You're allowed to have a bool, a Boolean. You're allowed to have null. You're allowed to have arrays, which are lists. And you're allowed to have objects, which are key value pairs. And the value may be any of the 6 values that types that you see here. So MongoDB is using JSON to represent its values. Now you can see here, images aren't one of the types. So you'd have to probably represent an image as a string, and it would be stored somewhere else on the file system, and the string would be the file name. So there's a limit to what you're able to store using JSON. I'd have to check if dates are in there or not, or if dates are stored as strings. I think dates might be stored as strings in JSON. I'll have to check that. Someone know off the top of their head, is date a JSON type or not?
It's not, only strings according to the Zybook.
Okay. That's what I thought. So I think you have to basically transmit dates as strings in JSON. Okay, so
it does have supported date functions though that are built in to do conversions.
That makes sense. So basically parsers that are able to take a string and convert them to a date. Okay.
Yeah. So kind of they work around it, and it's not too convenient.
Yep, I understand. Okay, thank you. Certainly dates are a big thing. Okay, so here is a sample Mongo collection. So here's 5 items or 5 documents. So each one here is this whole line is a document. You see their key value pairs. So item is the key, value is journal, QTY is the key, 25. So this is an object. When you put things in braces like this, this is an object. And you can see that the size attribute is a sub-object. Okay, so that's just an example of what they would look like in Mongo. And then with each item, when you insert it, Mongo automatically creates a so-called unique identifying key called _ID. So every document actually will have one of these _IDs. So for example, if I go to the handy dandy little thing that allows me to create Mongo little shell, and I create that, and now I do a db.inventory.find, you see that it added an _ID. So that's a unique identifier for each document. So that was automatically created. It's kind of like the auto increment feature in MySQL. So MongoDB has ways to search for things. So for example, as a very kind of rudimentary query language. So for example, I could look for any quantity that is 25 by saying quantity, and that finds the one item that has a quantity of 25. Again, I'm going to have you go through the tutorial yourself and look at these operators and see how they work. What I want to show you is what I meant by the return results in Mongo can be coarser grained, and why you also have to be careful with what you do with your searching in Mongo. So here I have a grades where what I'm doing is I have a student, the name of the student, I know I didn't change them to, I was modifying an old relation. So student is named Journal, has a list of exams. So arrays or lists start with a square bracket. And so this person had a midterm 1 with a score of 5 and a final with a score of 15. This person had an exam with a score of 5. So the first thing I'm going to show you is, let's say I want to find the exams whose score, I want to return students and exams that have a score between 10 and 20. So it looks like this particular query is the way to go. I want to find exams whose score is between 10 and 20. Okay, so I'm going to copy this over here. And I'm going to create that. And now I'm going to do that find. So if we go back here and just have a quick look, we can see that student journal has a final between 10 and 20. Student notebook does not. Student paper has one that's between 15 and 20. Student planner does not have one between 15 and 20, and student postcard has one between 15 and 20. So we're going to do this. And you'll see that unexpectedly, the student with no exam between 15 and 40. This student has an exam of 40 and an exam of 5, and they showed up in the result. And the reason is that this query right here does not do what you think it does. It says that as long as there is one tuple that is greater than or equal to 10, and there is another tuple that is less than or equal to 20, it satisfies the query. So here, this student has one midterm where the score is in fact greater than or equal to 10. And they have another one where the score is less than or equal to 20. And so even though there's two different tuples satisfying two different relations, it works. Even though this looks like it's an and it is, two different tuples can satisfy different branches of the and end up in the solution, which is not what you want. So you have to be very careful and use this match keyword, which forces the score to be the same document or the same objects, no, the same document has to satisfy both requirements. So now a score must be both greater than 10 and less than 20 to show up in the result. So if I do this one, whoops. Yep, it already, so one irritating thing is that sometimes this particular editor loses your file. So I'm going to have to reinsert the file. I don't know why, if it times out or something, but it will lose your database. So you should always check and not assume that your query is wrong, but assume instead it lost your collection. So there we go. We now have only 3 results, which is what we expect. We eliminated the one student who had exams with 40 and 5. Now,
Dr. BC?
Yes.
instead of using the match, can't we just do explicit and just give it to greater, and the greater than equal to and less than equal to? The Zybook showed and.
I didn't try that, so I would have to check. Let me do that after class and check and see if that's the case. I'm not sure if using explicit $ and would or would not do that.
Yeah, I think it's and
There is
colon, and then you
also-
do the two separately.
Okay.
I think that's right. I have also one little quick question. We can't do load in this browser, can we?
No, that's annoying. So you can. I downloaded MongoDB to my computer. It wasn't that hard. You basically can have the server run in one terminal. I'm on a Mac, so I run the server in one terminal window, and I run the interpreter in a second terminal window. So to make my life easy, I download it. It's open source. I'll send you a pointer to it. So you can actually download the server and interpreter to your machine, install it, and that will make your life easier. But if you don't,
I would appreciate that, yeah.
If you don't want to do that, you can certainly complete the homework assignment just using this little shell that you see here. But I have no issues with your downloading the package, and I'll send you a pointer, okay, in an announcement.
Thank you.
Okay, one last thing though that I wanted to point out. Notice that when you do the find, even here, you're getting back exams like 5, 60, 35 that are not part of the query. That's what I meant by the query language in MongoDB and other NoSQL languages is coarser grained. You actually cannot limit the result to just exams that are between 10 and 20. It will return the entire document with all the exams, even if just one of the exams matches the query. And then you have to go through it with a scripting language like Python and procedurally eliminate any exam that is not between 10 and 20. So with a relational database, you could have written a query that would ensure that the only exams that came back were those that were between 10 and 20. With MongoDB, that's just not possible. You get back the entire set of exams associated with that person, and then you have to filter them. Okay, so that pretty much does it for databases. There's one thing that I will talk about on Tuesday to finish up with MongoDB to tell you when you might want to use it in preference to a relational DB. There are specific times when it has a big advantage, and I'll tell you about those on Tuesday. But otherwise, on Tuesday, we're going to pivot and we're going to shift to doing web programming. So we're pretty much done with databases. We're going to move on to web programming in the second part of the course. So on Tuesday, we'll be talking about web programming. Thursday, obviously the exam, and then web programming the rest of the semester. So I will see you on Tuesday. Have a good weekend. If you had issues with today's practice respondus exam, please email me and let me know. Otherwise, I will see you on Tuesday. Also, I'm available for questions. I can stick around for a few minutes and take questions if you have them.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
I had a question. So on the practice quiz that we took today, I noticed after doing question 2 that I really need to study that. So I was actually wondering if you have the time, if you could go over that second one. And
absolutely, yes. So let me go to that quiz. Okay, you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I know on the test I'd be giving you more information, but one good thing is look at for foreign keys, okay? So office number looks like a foreign key because it's also here in the office relation.
Yeah.
So there was a relationship between staff and office. So you had, let's see, annotate.
So in other words, this would be like office has staff,
Yeah. So
staff
office
works at
has-
office.
Yeah, so office has staff or staff works in office, either one. But it's just one relationship here. Okay,
Oh,
so
it is?
Office has staff.
But isn't since staff number is also in office as a foreign key, wouldn't that be like?
Yes, but that's
a-
different. That's a separate one. So that then is staff manages. It's
Oh,
not
okay.
works in. There's one staff member who manages an office.
Okay.
Okay, so it's not a works relationship. That's not actually saying that the manager works at the office. It's saying that that office is managed by one person.
Yeah, that was an oversight on my part.
Yep. Okay, and then the other one here was this one. This is a relationship and it's bristling with foreign keys. So it has owner number, it has staff number, and it has customer number. So this was meant to be a three-way relationship between staff, I'm sorry, staff shouldn't be in there. Customer and owner.
So all of this is
was
all
a rents relationship in some sense, or lease, that a customer signs a lease with an owner and a member of staff, or a staff person has a customer sign a lease with an owner.
How do you know what to put in that diamond though? Like,
if you put lease, I would be happy. If you simply used the name of the relation, that's often a pretty good. If you just put lease here, I would be happy.
So is this complete?
Turn it from a noun, basically turn it from a noun into a verb.
Mm-hmm. So you don't actually need the lease relation like as a table itself on that diagram, other than the relation.
Right. All you need here is that, right, it's not a entity. I guess what you're saying is that what you're saying when you say a table?
That is what I'm saying.
Yes. You would not show leases as a entity. You would show it as a relationship.
Okay. Thank you. That helps a lot.
And I will tell you on the test, I also ask you as part of the question to tell me what are the entities. So here you would tell me that office, staff, customer, and owner are entities, but not lease, because lease is in fact a relationship.
Okay. Even though it in itself is a relation.
Yes. So remember, there's actually three types of relations. Okay. There are relations that are entities. Okay. So there are relations that are entities. That's the most common. Then there are relations that are relationships. So they're basically relationships that have attributes, like lease. And then there's a third type of relation which holds a multi-valued attribute. So for example, phone numbers. If a branch has multiple phone numbers, you can't put, a cell can't have multiple values. So you end up with a separate relation called phone number. which would be the branch number and the phone number. And that would be neither, phone number in this case is neither a relationship nor an entity. It's just a multi-valued attribute.
Okay.
Zip code would have been a similar example. There was a number of times we created relationships where you had essentially a zip code, and it was essentially something that mapped a zip code, say, to a city or a state. Zip code really is not a entity or a relationship. It's more or less a attribute.
It sounds like
that one, I'm not going to ask you to classify zip code that way. I'm just telling you that there are three types of relations. You can't assume that when something is a relation that it's automatically an entity.
It sounds like the third type is a result of normalization.
Yes. So the third one is when you go from unnormalized form to first normal form, actually.
Oh.
So here, let me, if you just have a moment, I'll show you in the notes what I mean, okay? If we go to, whoops, normalization. Let me clear that. If I can. Let's see. So unnormalized form is a table that contains multi-valued attributes, like multiple phone numbers for a branch. So to go to first normal form, you actually move any multi-valued attribute out into a separate relation. So it's actually when you go from unnormalized form to first normal form is when you move those multi-valued attributes out into a separate relation.
Okay, thank you. This is all helpful.
That's important. I'll give you a hint. You will be dealing with a multi-valued attribute on the exam. So as part of that normalization process, there will be something where you actually, to get from the unnormalized form to the first normal form, will have to move a multi-valued attribute out into its own relation.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? Anyone else with a question? Okay. If not, I will say have a good weekend, and I will see you all on Tuesday.